Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Welcome to the Pest Geek podcast. I'm Stephen Vantassel, wildlife control consultant. Here we have another episode of Living Wildlife. Today, I'm not talking about wildlife, though. I'm going to go into the business world, and we're going to talk about marketing. I have a guest with me here today, Jeremy Lyle of Set Sail Marketing. And Sail is spelled S-A-L-E, which is kind of a cute little turn of phrase. Set Sail Marketing. Welcome, Jeremy. And just a reminder, you are being recorded.
Thank you, Mr. Vantassel. It's a pleasure to be here. There's a very warm place in my heart for the people in the pest control community, and I am thrilled to get a chance to serve you all today.
Well, we're glad to have you. So I met you. We connected on LinkedIn, and so I said, well, marketing is always a challenge for people in our service industry. So we're having you on board here, and my understanding is your company specializes in social media marketing. Did I have that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Digital marketing as a whole, but I really excel on Facebook and LinkedIn styles of prospecting. Okay,
so tell our listenership, what do you do? How do you do it? How did you get started in this type of work?
Well, to boil it down into a nutshell, into the simplest terms, I generate leads. But as is with any business, there's a lot more to me than that. And I'm typically trying to drive for a bigger relationship than that with my clients. Ultimate goal is to always become the outsourced chief marketing officer, so that I can really help manage all the different channels of marketing to really help you hit your target market on all of the platforms that they visit. And really, on top of that, it's about building trust with your target market, getting them to know, like, and trust you, so that the next time they have a problem that you solve, you are the one that they think of. I've been doing. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No. I'm just thinking of a question, but I want you to keep going.
Okay. I've been doing digital marketing as a whole for about 5 years, and I really got into the lead generation agency space about 3.5 years ago. And it only took me about 3 months to really fall into the niche of pest control and home services, just because I felt like they were being underserved. A lot of people, or a lot of agencies, they take the quick wins, the easy companies to market for, and companies like pest control, they get lost in the noise of everything going on the internet. And having worked with a few, as a client, worked with a few pest control companies, I really appreciated the difference between the good ones and the ones that are just out there to make a quick buck. And I decided that I really wanted to help the good ones get recognition. And I figured this was the best way for me to do that. And so now, having worked with pest control for about 3 years, I've learned a lot of the ins and outs of the little things you have to do to get noticed and to speak to your target market in such a way that they warm up to you. They stop looking at you as a commodity, and they look at you more like a boutique product that they are happy to spend their money with, because you give them such a great experience.
Yeah, I think you're onto something, because it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to be one of the biggest challenges that the service industry, like pest control or wildlife control operators, have, and that is they tend to be crisis driven. So the client's under stress, they need something resolved yesterday, but they're calling now, and so how do you build that longer term memory in your client? Because for most wildlife control operators, when they resolve a client's problem, the client never needs them again. I have a colleague out in who's the president of our association, and he says if a client listens to him, he will never be back at their house again. Well, that's different in the pest control world because bugs are a lot harder to keep out of a building.
Absolutely.
But so how do you keep your company in the mind of the client when it may be years before they need you again?
Well, the first thing I do, and one of my favorite first campaigns to run with my clients is what I call it a carpet bombing campaign, I call it that because it's where you really put content out and it shows up everywhere that you can get it to go. If you have a Google My Business, you put the post on there. You put it on LinkedIn. You put it on Facebook. You put it on Instagram. Anywhere you can put it. And I ask for between 60 to 90-second videos where you teach your target market something, like how to solve a problem that you see very common. A lot of times we'll try to solve that problem that needs to get solved before you really come in. Like for me, I try to teach my target market about the basics of digital marketing and how it leverages in such a way that my clients can make money. And that helps me serve them at a higher level because they already understand that digital marketing is an investment as long as they understand that the person they're hiring is a real person and not somebody, a fly-by-night agency trying to make a few bucks. In the same token, as a wildlife control operator, you would want to teach them, how to recognize signs of early, what would you call that? Infestation, early
damage, presence, yeah. Sure. No, that makes sense.
Just the early signs. Like, I mean, everybody knows, garbage cans knocked over. That's probably raccoons, or at least that's what I would think from the client side of things.
Right.
But I don't know how to recognize tracks in the yard, how to recognize, if there's signs in your lawn that shows that you've got a wildlife issue. And the earlier you can catch those things, the less damage you're going to have to pay for in the long run. And so by creating these videos where like you could even shoot when you're on site, at another client, you get the permission, of course. But if you can shoot video of some of the signs you're seeing, and it doesn't have to be 4K or anything else, just your cell phone camera, clear enough so that they can see what you're talking about, so that they can understand, okay, those are the signs I need to look for. And so if they see those signs, they're not just going to go Google some wildlife company. They're going to look for you because you're the one that taught them that.
Yeah.
And so you drive those. The second thing I would say is while you're on site and you're solving the big problem, always be on the lookout for other problems to solve. And the closer you can get to an ongoing service that you could provide, whether that's like, pay, I don't know, 30 or 40 bucks every 6 months so that you come out and do an inspection. Just check everything, check the eaves, check the foundations, make sure that you're not seeing those harder to see signs of wildlife intrusion, then all the better. And so, and anybody that anybody that thinks logically is going to know that maintenance is so much cheaper than disaster recovery.
Right.
And so, and I'm not a wildlife technician, so I wouldn't know the ins and outs of your business model and know where you could find more problems to solve and problems that you could set an ongoing service with.
Right. So let's talk about we have one of our Pest Geek members wants to explore hiring you to do their social marketing. Can you sort of walk through the process of how you would talk with the client and then see if you're a good fit and what that process would be and what that client would expect to obtain over time?
Okay. So I start every relationship up with a prospect up with a discovery call first, and we spend about 10 to 15 minutes on the phone. I ask a few questions to see what they're already doing to drive leads. You know, whether if they're paying for outbound leads, if they're door knocking, uh, if they have a really good community that's sending them referrals all the time, if they're dealing with Home Advisor, if they're dealing with Yelp, and we talk through that. I find out, you know, are you getting the volume of leads that you really want to get from them? And if you're not, then I talk about, okay, well, how can we be able to meet that need that you're looking for at a price that's affordable and is set so that your business can scale. Once we decide, yes, the program is a good fit for you and we work well together, then we set up a demonstration call where we jump on a Zoom call or a Hangouts call, whatever works well for the prospect. And I walk them through, you know, all 7 steps of what I'm going to do if it's residential. If we're doing commercial, I walk them through the steps that I go through to get them those kind of leads. I answer any and all questions, and then we figure out that happy point of price to value, where they're going to get the number of leads that they want to get that will fit within their closing ratio. So if they're closing 60-70% of their leads, then we work more on getting them. You know, we spend more time on qualifying those leads so that they're getting the leads that they really want to close, but the volume is lower. But if they're still needing to establish their sales process, then we just ramp up. We just get them every lead we can find, so that they can really refine their their sales process, if that makes sense.
Right. No. You're trying to create the funnel and how big the funnel needs to be for that particular client.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense. Do you have an idea of what an owner operator should be spending? Do you have like a rule of thumb that says, you know, out of your total budget, how much should be going to marketing and advertising, in your opinion?
That's a really good question. I know what my prices are, but I typically, I mean, when I take on a client, I usually, the clients or the prospects that have less than 2 trucks, they usually see me as too much of an expense. They have a hard time seeing the investment of that, and they have a hard time being able to spend that much money and have that money gone until they make it back through pulling in new business.
Right.
I would say that to hire an agency, you're really going to want to be able to shell out at least $1,500 a month. Now, keep in mind, that's not an expense. That's an investment, because that $1,500 spent out will usually pull you in at least 40 new prospects a month. Typically more, but I usually set that as my baseline. I don't go below that, because most of the people I work with, you go below that number and they're not closing enough of them to really make the cost make sense.
Right.
So if you think in terms of that, 40, and if you're closing 90% of them, that's that's what is that, 36? So 36 sales in a month for $1,500. That could be, 2 or 3 or 4 times what you're spending. So that's where the investment comes in.
Right. No, I see that. So the concern that I have, and it's a challenge, and I don't know how to break it, and that is most of our industry, especially for the wildlife control side, not so much the pest control side. The pest control industry has really gone through a lot of consolidation over the last several years, where the bigger companies are taking over your medium-sized companies, and so you have this sort of dumbbell look of where you have a lot of one-man operation applicators, and then you have the bigger super companies, and then the wildlife control side, I would say maybe 5 to 10% max would have employees.
Right.
And the 90% of the wildlife control field, they're one-man operations, or it's, a guy maybe using his son to help him from time to time, or his wife, or whatever. But they're not really quote unquote true employees, if you understand what I'm saying. So how do we how do we break that marketing issue down so that they're able to do something, but they won't be able to swing to $1,500. And so I remember you talking about a course. Is that your desire? Is you're trying to create a course that someone could take and implement some of these principles on their own at a
Yes.
much lower cost rate? So why don't you explain that course, and when do you think that's going to be up and running, and what that might cost, and how they would get a hold of you, and
So
what you
it's
share?
been my dream, and it's really a trend that I've noticed in the last 3-4 months, is that a lot of the people I'm talking to are one-man operations, like you said, maybe two, but they're not getting the volume that they need.
Right.
And so I'm really seeing a vacuum in the market where they're not ready to hire somebody like me yet, but they're ready to spend something on marketing to really start driving more business so that they can grow. And so what I'm working on doing is I want to create a course where I will teach you exactly how to do what I do. I will teach you how to manage the Facebook Ads Manager. I will teach you how to build a compelling offer and a Facebook ad, how to pick the right graphics to be able to run this with, how to write your ad in such a way that how it's going to get customers' attention and get them interested in wanting to buy from you. And I will teach you how to build out the follow-up systems. In fact, I'm going to provide a follow-up system to go with it, because I will design the course around that. That way, you don't have to worry about going out and finding the tech stack that you need to be able to handle everything. I have an in-house CRM that I use that I can build a profile for on all the people that buy my course and set it up to run so that all they have to do is just tweak their messaging so that they are the ones that get pointed out in this. Whether it's, whether your business name, the specific part of the market that you serve. I talk about your backstory a little bit, your soap opera sequence, as I like to call it, which is just a compelling story about how your company began, why you started the company, the hero stories of clients that you've helped. If Grandma June had a bunch of raccoons underneath her house and they were tearing up insulation, and she was getting ready to lose her reverse mortgage because the house was about to get condemned, and then you came in and fixed it, and now Grandma June is enjoying her retirement.
Nice.
All of these things, we set that up, and I build all that out with you together so that we can really get you working. And uh, in the interest of it working out for both of us, my interest is that once you scale to the point where you've got more business than you can handle time doing marketing, then you just want to hand the reins over to me, pay me to do the same thing for you, and then we scale your business to the next level.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Do you have an idea? So, a couple questions. One, when is this course available now? And if not, when do you plan to launch it?
No, I have a pretty good idea of what the course material will be, but my biggest challenge right now is getting the videos shot so that I can put it together. It's like I can do all of the technical stuff. My biggest struggle is getting the videos shot, and so that's been my biggest holdup.
I hear you. Camtasia is the program I would suggest.
Camtasia is fantastic,
Yes.
and I'm looking at that and a couple of others. So that might be what I go with. I like the software.
Camtasia works pretty well because it sounds, because you're doing a lot of screen work on the computer, I would suspect.
Exactly.
So you're going to be just recording that. That would be the program I would definitely take a hard look at. So that is coming. You think it probably before the end of the year?
Oh yes, I'm thinking in the next couple of months I should be able to have at least a beta out, and then and I would think it would be fantastic if your listeners reached out to you and said that they were interested in being part of the beta control group, so I could really get feedback and find out what parts of the courses really resonate, what really works, and what is confusing. Maybe I get too technical. I have a background in IT, so
Right.
I can sometimes dive down a rabbit hole and not have my audience follow me.
Sure.
So I would love to have access to some people that would be able to give me that kind of feedback. And I would, of course, give a deep discount to any of the guys that wanted to help me out there.
Sure. I think that would be, I think our Pest Geek podcast audience would be welcoming that sort of opportunity. So we would just have you send me your contact information, via email or something. And we have show notes that are attached to our podcast, and that would be on our website. So we would just include that, and if people are interested, they would contact you directly.
Fantastic.
We would appreciate, when you get ready to launch, that you would reach back out to Pest Geek Podcast, and we would do probably another show announcing your course. So we'd be able to do a little follow up. The second question that I had is, do you have an idea of what type of population is needed to be able to do the marketing? Because one of the challenges that I find with some wildlife control operators is that they're out in the middle of nowhere,
Right.
and they're frustrated they can't find any work. And I'm like, well, you have to have people to, no matter how good a marketer you are, if there's only, like, I live in a town of 6,000 people, and we only have 12,000 in the entire county.
Right.
So I'm in Montana, right? So
Right.
it takes me 2 hours at 70 miles an hour to get to Walmart.
Of course.
Right. So I drove a road one night for 2 hours, and I saw 25 cars.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. So a lot of people can't process emptiness. Right.
Right.
So I'm from the East Coast, originally from Massachusetts. So
Okay.
we have more people within 45 minutes of where I live than we have in the entire state of Montana. Right. So it's hard for people to grasp that. And so, do you have an idea of if a wildlife control operator, since you're more familiar with pest control, let's start with pest control. What would be the minimum population someone would need to have a pest control business full time?
When I'm setting up, and this is probably the only way that I can really relate this, is when I'm setting up an audience on Facebook for a client. I usually set the boundaries, like, because you can do location-based marketing on Facebook.
Yes.
I try to set the location and my interest targeting so that I'm getting at least 10 to 20,000 possible hits within that.
Okay.
The more, you really don't want to go up above like 60 or 70,000 either. So if you're up in the hundreds of thousands or in the millions, you really want to dial it in, because you don't want to be paying to show your ad to that many people, because you're going to spend a bunch of money without getting conversions. Right. But if it's below, I would say 10,000, then you're gonna struggle with getting that reach as well. So my recommendation there would be, if you're hitting less than that, you're either going to need to expand your serviceable zone so that you go farther to serve clients, or you're going to want to, I don't know, you got to figure out some way to be able to reach enough people.
Yeah.
At the same time,
I would probably expand the services that you provide, is how I would look at it. So either you expand your service area, or you have to expand the number of services you provide.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah.
I was also going to say, I also don't have a whole lot of background in the wildlife, but I would think in the more rural areas, you would have an uptick in the amount of work you're getting, because there's more wildlife out there. Am I wrong?
Well, actually, yeah, it's the other way around. It's counterintuitive, but there are actually more wildlife in suburban areas. You can't have it, downtown New York City. You're not going to have a lot of wildlife. There's too much concrete. But when you start getting out into more suburban areas, what you have is that golden ratio of structures which provide housing and then food.
Gotcha.
It's the food that does it. And also the other challenge is that in the rural areas, they typically just take the shotgun and shove it out the bathroom window and take care of the issue.
Right.
So there you have a little bit more self-help aspects to it. Well, I was wondering, in terms of your experience, what are the traits of the clients that you think that, what are the traits that your best clients have, your most successful clients? What are the aspects of their character or their behavior that make them the most successful? We know what you bring to the equation. What does the client need to bring to the equation to maximize their time with you?
Um, I actually wrote an article on this on LinkedIn, and that is about being teachable or coachable. My grandmother at 92 years old was still always ready to listen, always ready to learn something new. And I really locked onto that because, intuitively at 92, most of it. You've been around a lot. And so when she was still ready to hear me in my teenage years teach her something, and she would find enjoyment out of learning something new from me, I enjoyed teaching her that as well. And that really taught me a valuable lesson. And that was that I should never stop learning. And so when I run across the pest control operators that they're ready to learn, they understand the value of digital marketing for their business, and they understand that I'm running a business for this, so I know what I'm talking about. And so they're ready to just implement rather than argue with me about, oh, I've tried video before and that didn't work. I've tried Facebook ads before, that didn't work. And then instead of telling me that, what I'm suggesting isn't working, if they'll instead say, okay, well, tell me how you're doing it differently. Tell me, teach me this. That is probably the number one biggest benefit that they can bring to the table, not only for me to be able to do my job, but for them to be able to grow. Because and I teach this, I get after my kids about this all the time, because I'll tell them something and they'll argue with me, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
Change is incredibly difficult. I mean, you're dealing with all of these when a business owner, I think, has you need to be a special personality, I think, to have the mental and emotional fortitude to go it alone.
Yes.
And sometimes that toughness gets in the way of your progress. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you balance that to knowing that you're not going to be a pushover, but you're willing to try something new? So how long should someone give the marketing process, to be fair to that particular process? Is it 3 months, 6 months? Is there like a golden time that you should know whether something's going to work or not?
I've usually got something going well within 2 to 3 months. I don't like doing long-term contracts because a lot of people get very antsy about that.
Right.
And because I run into a lot of like the SEO type lead generation companies that they need 6 months, of work before they start really seeing a return. And that's frustrating for a lot of business owners, because that's a long time to be spending out before you're getting anything in return. So I've focused more on the direct response style of things, but that's still not a perfect system. There's still changes that have to be made. There's still adjustments so that your ads are getting they're growing and they're evolving and they're getting more efficient. And like you said, that's a process. Sometimes you hit a home run right out of the gate, but that's not typical.
Right.
But,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that, but when you're willing to put the time and effort in and the patience into really building out this ad and adjusting it so that you're really speaking to your audience and you're solving their problem at a high level, then you will have a campaign that will work for years to come once you've put the work in on it.
Right. So you really need to have that long-term goal. So what do you think is the biggest marketing challenge facing a PCO or a WCO? In terms of your experience, what is the biggest challenge that you find that they're confronting?
I mean, off the bat, it's finding trustworthy individuals to work with. because there's some muddy waters in the digital marketing realm. And I'll be the first to admit it's tough. You know, it's tough to know the good ones without really doing your homework and seeing behind the curtain. Personally, I try to be in as much contact with my clients as possible. You know, text messages, emails, talking about what's going on. And I found that the agencies that are not doing as well, they tend to be less interactive. They're less responsive to their clients, and so that's what I've noticed is kind of some of the telltale signs. Unfortunately, it's a little difficult to see that early on.
Yeah.
Before you spend that check.
Right.
And I get it, man.
No, I hear you.
Because from the marketing standpoint, I spend a lot of money right on the front end when I'm creating a campaign. You know, paying for the software, paying for the space on the advertising, paying any assistance that I may have to help me get the stuff all built out and still run my daily life. And so I can't take somebody on a free trial. There's people that do that, but that's usually a red flag in my book. If somebody's offering, you know, a completely free trial, then they're throwing spaghetti at the wall, in my opinion. There's some people that are doing it well, but in my opinion, if they're doing a free trial, they're throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing if they can make something stick.
Right. What would be another red flag? You mentioned two. The one that the lack of contact would be certainly one, and I've certainly heard that with some of the other marketing firms that are out there where that's happened, where everything was great in the beginning, and then the phone calls aren't getting returned and what have you. The second one you said was the second red flag was free initial. A free initial trial. And is there any other red flags that our Pest Geek podcast listeners should be looking out for before they sign on with a marketing company?
Watch for somebody that only talks about the results. Right? They only talk about how much money you're going to make. They only talk about how many customers you're going to get. They never talk about the how. I personally, I make a big point of pulling back the curtain and showing exactly what I'm doing, because I want it to make sense to my clients. I want them to see, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Why that works. So when somebody is just saying, oh, you're going to make so much money with this campaign, you're going to have so many customers. Here's the price. If you pay me $1,500 and I make you $6,000. Are you ready to work with me? Let's do it.
Yeah. I had a situation where I was, because I just kept looking at some of these advertisements, and I would be like, well, if they're so good, then why don't they work? Why aren't they comfortable working off commission? I mean, that was the question that I had, right? And so if someone is that good at times, why don't we? Everything's all guaranteed, and they're talking about all this money you're going to be making. I'm like, well, why can't you work off commission? If I'm selling 1,000, I sell books and I sell, I'm not in the field work anymore because the job I have prohibits me from going into business like that, because it would be competition with people in the state. So, but if someone, you'd see things online, we'll help you market your book or whatever. And I'm thinking, well, if you're so good, then why don't you just get a piece of the sale?
And there are marketers that do that.
I haven't found them.
Well, typically, if they're going to go that route, they're going to want to actually own a piece of the company at that point.
Yeah.
And that's that. It's about security for the marketer as well. Because I said, when I build when I build out a new campaign for my clients, like I said, I spend a bunch of money on the front end, because I have to set up the new software. I have to get all of my copywriting in place. I have to write my emails. I have to do all my digital work. So it's a like marketers, it's a very heavy front end that we use to get a campaign going.
Sure.
And I mean, maybe that's only, with somebody like me, where I'm a smaller operation. And because I'm a smaller operation, I have more of my heart is in serving other small operations. So I really pour myself into a new campaign,
Yeah.
which is why I can't, like I said, I can't, spend all of that and then and wait for commissions to start rolling in.
Sure.
And it's also because we as the marketers are not doing the actual sale. So that would be us hanging our future on the sales ability of our clients.
Absolutely. No, I get that. But I was referring just in terms of products. You're selling a widget, right? But you're absolutely correct on the sales, on the service, on your selling of a service. Yeah, certainly the marketer doesn't know what the last, the last mile, so to speak, that customer service provider relationship. You're only introducing them together. Ultimately, the wildlife control operator, the PCO, has to convince the client to buy.
Exactly.
Right? And that's obviously out of your hands. And I think that's important because, there's, in our industry, we, like most business owners, we complain a lot, right? And so we're always whining about something.
I do too.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So, but I think it is helpful for what you're able to describe here to help our listeners and certainly help me understand your side of the business, so that we can appreciate the work and challenges that you have on your side of the equation. And so I think that's a valuable insight for our listeners. I wanted to ask, we're in about 36 minutes, so I don't want to hold you longer. I told you a half an hour, where I'm more than willing to go longer, but I don't want to take up too much of your time if you need to get off with some other things. But I did have a couple, so if you want to get off, I only have a couple more questions, and then I want you to sort of summarize, talk about how to market, how do people get a hold of you? We want to make sure we give you a plug. But I did want to ask, before I let you go, what do you see the future of marketing going? I mean, there's been such a disruption with Facebook and Google. Where is it going? It just seems to me that the business owner is scrambling. They keep changing all the time, and it's tremendously time consuming, it seems.
Yes.
It's bewildering.
I would say I don't think Facebook is going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay.
LinkedIn is the other huge I get 95% of my business through LinkedIn. It is tremendous. And granted, I sell business to business.
Right.
So that's why LinkedIn is so powerful for me. But if you serve commercial clients, if you do wildlife or pest control for commercial clients, and that can even be realtors, mortgage brokers, restaurants, anything like that, get yourself on LinkedIn and reach out to me. I actually have a Google sheet that I built up that will teach you how to optimize your profile so that it looks more like a sales letter rather than a resume.
Nice.
Because your clients don't want, or your prospects don't want to see a resume. It's just going to gloss over. It's going to help you look like a commodity rather than a boutique. And they're going to look for the lowest price. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you create it as a sales letter and you meet their pain points, you talk about the problems that you solve that is keeping them awake at night, then they're not going to shop around. They're going to go to you and they're going to stay with you because you are the one that understands them the best.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've got that presentation. I'm happy to give it away to anybody that comes in and asks. I have a website that's exterminatoraccelerator.com.
Exterminatoraccelerator.com. Okay.
I'll message that to you as well so that you
appreciate it.
And so you can put it in the show notes. That's going to give you the exact breakdown of my residential program. Good. I don't have one built out for my commercial program yet, but it's coming.
Excellent.
Just like my course is coming. And on top of that, I would love to offer, because I have another call in about 10 minutes. I want to offer, let's say, 5 30-minute marketing audits to your audience. You come up with a password or a phrase that they're only going to get from your podcast, and have them reach out to you. You select the 5 that you're going to send over to me. I don't know whether you'll have them do an application or first come, first serve, but send me whatever the key phrase is that they'll give me, and I will give out 5 30-minute marketing audits to help them really refine their process and get them moving.
Nice. We really appreciate that. So, why don't you summarize? Give us your closing marketing pitch for our listeners, how they would get a hold of you, and what you can do for them, and we'll close out with that.
Okay, you can either find me on LinkedIn as Jeremy Lyle, the home service referrals all day long. You search that on LinkedIn, you will find me. You can go to my website at exterminatoraccelerator.com, and there's a place in there where you can book a phone call with me. There will be a little form to fill out just so that I've got some information on you moving forward. Excuse me. Those are probably the two best ways to reach me. And then, and even if we don't work together, even if we don't pull that trigger, like I said, I've got a space in my heart for the pest control industry. So I will walk through a few things in your business and see if I can't help you at least be a couple % better off than you were before our phone call, and see if we have steps forward that we can go in the future where we can be ready for me to work with you.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeremy. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. So, I want to sign off here. I'm Stephen Vantassel, wildlife control consultant, helping you all live the wildlife, and we hope that you're going to go check out Jeremy Lyle's website, exterminatoraccelerator.com, and stay tuned for how to get a hold of one of those 5 30-minute audits. Thanks again, Jeremy. Take care, everyone.
Really enjoyed it.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.